Let's set up the Twitch so that it reads properly. Music on. So join me. So. Hello, huh? Almost ready. Just got to change the Twitch so that it shows that it's an art stream, not a podcast talk show. Why does that to me? Okay. So, topic for discussion tonight is Falcon and the Winter Soldier. People are welcome to jump in the stream if they want to. Turn off the comments so I can see if anybody says anything. And this is the link to the stream if anybody wants to jump in, talk. Yap. So this is just the entire series, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Being an old Marvel guy, a comic book fan in general, like to look at these shows and see what's going on. We'll talk about characters. We'll talk about plot beats. There will be spoilers. So I guess we'll get right into it. In the meantime, we're going to draw too. Let's see, I've got I did a this is supposed to be Bucky, but I don't know what the hell I was smoking. The proportions are way off. His hand is tiny, his head is huge, one arm bigger than the other. But I did like how the arm came out as far as the metal. So I've got a technique now for doing this. I'm going to redo this one while I'm talking about stuff. So I already got the drawing done. I'll start talking about that. Here's the proportions are better. Hopefully the drawing's better in general. So Falcon and Winter Soldier. Marvel's latest Disney Plus show. Do you have any thoughts on it? Do you want to throw in? I gotta tell you, it was overall I really enjoyed the show, but there were some bits that were a little odd. It's getting hard for me to watch some of these shows now as I get older and my brain starts thinking about adult stuff. There's things that you watch it and go, what the hell? This doesn't seem like you wouldn't do this in real life. But then again, the whole thing is fantasy and it doesn't matter. So, now, this will dry lighter than it goes on. It's one of the things I learned as I was doing the other piece. But anyway, as I was saying, there's a lot that I really like about the show. There's also some beats in the show that you just make me go, huh? But overall, I would say it was a good show. I've been on record before saying that Anthony Mackie, in the past, I've been less than impressed with his acting, but I've always liked him as a person. Like when you see him on the convention circuit doing the panels and stuff, he always seems like a really cool guy. But up until recently, a lot of his acting work I haven't dug too much. But there were two shows that I watched prior to Falcon and Winter Soldier that gave me some hope. And one was Synchronic, and the other was Outside the Wire. Now, Outside the Wire gave me hope for the action parts, because it's a sci-fi thing where he's a rogue AI, basically. And then Synchronic was one where he's a paramedic who runs into this drug that transports people in time, kind of. And that one gave me hopes for his acting. And I can say, having watched Falcon and Winter Soldier, that I like Anthony Mackie as an actor now. He had some cheesy lines that he had to sell, very comic booky, and for the most part he was able to do it. So props to Anthony Mackie on that. One of the nice things about these Marvel MCU shows is they give room for the characters to breathe and grow, which is something they can't do in the well, they could, but they don't do in the movies. Can't say they can't. They just, financially it doesn't make sense for them to in a lot of cases. So that's, when you watch WandaVision, you watch Falcon and Winter Soldier, and you get the pacing, you get to luxuriate and talk about characters and develop characters. Like this, the whole thing with Bucky and his sister. I don't know how much of that we would get in a movie version, because it's great character building, but it doesn't do a lot plot-wise. To move the story forward. I mean, it shows growth for Sam. But like if you're looking at it you've only got an hour or two or three to tell a larger story, then that's the kind of stuff that just gets cut out, and you don't get to see that in the longer movies. So that's the thing I'm really enjoying about the Marvel MCU shows. Is the time they have to explore their characters. And truthfully, the Falcon in the movies, was a side character. He wasn't. There wasn't much to him. It's like one of those almost he's in the comics, so we got to put him in the movies. You talk about representation matters, so hey, we got a black character in there. So, you know, but he wasn't a major character, and I think going forward now, he will be a more major character. Now I don't know what his role will be. Between this show and the last one, WandaVision, it seems very much like they're setting up Young Avengers. I don't know that they are, but it just seems that way. Because in WandaVision, you get the two kids who later become Young Avengers, and in this one, you get Isaiah Bradley's grandson or nephew. I'm not sure, but he becomes Patriot in the comics, so we're setting that up, and then you get Hawkeye's kid coming up in the next one, which becomes an Avenger later on, a young Avenger, and we've got Ironheart coming down the pike, the show Ironheart, with Riri Williams, who's going to be like tech genius, taking over some of the Tony Stark role as far as the tech. We've got Miss Marvel coming, which I'm looking forward to. I enjoyed the comic. It's interesting because she's going to be the first openly Muslim character in the MCU, and we get people complaining about the diversity and the political stuff in the shows already. So I imagine there's going to be some butthurt fanboys, over the whole Miss Marvel stuff. Sad, but back to life. I'll double check now. The link is in the notes. If anybody wants to jump in the stream with me and talk about this stuff, you're welcome to. I'm going to finish up this Bucky piece, and then I have a few other character pieces drawn. If you'd like to see a particular character from the show or something, let me know. I can take a shot at it maybe. But I guess we'll just start jumping into each character, and then we can talk about maybe favorite moments and stuff like that. I've already talked a little bit about Anthony Mackie as an actor. Let's talk about Sam Wilson as a character. His introduction in The Winter Soldier. One of the things they really like what they did with the characters, making him the veteran counselor, dealing with veterans with PTSD and trauma, which is a pretty challenging thing to portray. It was pretty lightly handled in the movies, but at least they established that as part of Sam's background. So when you see it in the show, it doesn't come out of nowhere. This is an acrylic paint pen, if you're curious, by the way. I don't have any comments yet, so I just continue talking to myself, I guess. But yeah, I like the fact that they set him up as a counselor for the military folks. And then when you get into this show, they contrast Anthony Mackie being a veteran with John Walker being a veteran, which is kind of an interesting juxtaposition. one of the things, and I'm prior military myself. You know, I'm not a combat veteran, I guess, thankfully, but I did serve in the Navy for 22 years, or just shy of 22 years. Um, but, one of the things that the juxtaposition was, you know, some of the things that make a good soldier don't necessarily equate to being a good person and or, you know, being able to be a good ambassador or hero or um, law enforcement kind of role, which, you know, a lot of this show is kind of a proxy for law enforcement. And I guess I should warn again that, you know, due to the nature of the story, you know, there's some political comments in here, and it's just the nature of it. It's just the show coming from a black writer's perspective had some things to say, and they're not necessarily things that people all agree with or disagree with, but I think it's a valuable discourse to have. Moving along. But the whole growth of Sam coming into the show, you know, will he take the mantle that he was given in at the end of Endgame? Should he take the mantle? Now, obviously, as a comic reader, I mean, I haven't read all of the Captain America Sam Wilson stories, nor have I read the Captain America Bucky Barnes stories. You know, because my comic reading is a few years out of date. So I fell off comics a bit in the 90s and just haven't really caught back up. Getting married and stuff like that kind of cut into my reading time and my capital expenses for being able to buy comics on the regular. I have slowly started getting back into them, but it's all catch up. So I can't tell you, you know, I know canon-wise that, you know, both Bucky and Sam have been Captain America at some point in the comics. So when they have Steve pass off the shield at the end of Endgame, you're like, well, it could be either one of them, really, canonically. And I'm actually glad that they went with Sam in this. Here's the thing for me with Bucky. I like him as a character, but even through the end of this series, it's hard for me to have the redemption arc for Bucky that, you know, the show and the people want to give him, because I mean, I accept it from a story perspective, just like Black Widow. I mean, if you and I think when we see the Black Widow movie, they'll touch on this when she talks about the Red Ledger. You know, you're talking about characters that are assassins that have killed countless people. You know, now whether or not they were able to control themselves matters, but the body count doesn't change. So it's always kind of hard for me to, you know, want to make Bucky the really good guy. He's got a lot of blood on his hands. It's just a fact of life. In the comic universe, anyway. Can't say fact of life as in real life, but, you know, in the stories, he's got a lot of blood on his hands. But so I'm glad when Marvel decided was figuring out who to pass the shield off to, that they wanted to pass the shield off to someone, they decided to go with Sam. And this series has done a good job, in my opinion. It's all opinion, you know. It's all opinion. In justifying that decision. You know, they've shown Sam to be a good man. You get in Captain America: The First Avenger, you know, when they're looking for who to give the super soldier serum to, you know, that's basically what Erskine is telling them. I'm not looking for a good soldier. I'm looking for a good man. And that's what we needed in this case, too, to take over the mantle. You don't need a good soldier. John Walker, you know, from what they show in the show, was a good soldier. But, you know, talking to friends and stuff about this kind of stuff, because I'm a nerd, obviously, you know, talking about what makes a good soldier, is, you know, mission accomplishments, protecting your brothers and sisters in arms, you know. But here's the really sad reality of a wartime environment. Collateral damage happens, okay? And not only does it happen, but there's a certain amount of acceptability in collateral damage, you know. So we expect people that are trying to protect us to not have that collateral damage, you know? And that's why you get this allegory of this show with law enforcement, you know. What makes a good officer, a good enforcer, isn't necessarily the same thing as what makes a good soldier. And I think the show did a pretty good job showing that. Let me, sorry, let's grab a warm marker from over here. Anybody have any thoughts on Sam before we dive into some other characters? But like I said, I think the show did a really good job showing why the choice to make Sam the new Captain America was the right choice. His agonizing, that's one of the areas that I found, you know, kind of troublesome with the show. It's like they kind of drug out as him agonizing over it. It's like, in my opinion, again, it's all opinion. You don't have to have the same opinion. But I do feel like they kind of drug out his decision longer than they needed to. Come to terms with. Here's one of the things that I loved about the show, though. In order for him to get to the point where he was ready to accept it, they had to tell some of the Isaiah Bradley story. And I was pretty surprised that they went there with the show, to be honest with you, because if you ever read Red, White, and Black, it's a dark, dark story. And if you haven't read it, go find it. If you Google, I think it's comicsonline.il, you can find the entire story of Red, White, and Black online and read it. And if you like freeze the end frame in the last episode and read the write-up that they gave Isaiah, it's messed up. But the graphic novel or the comic series, the short-run miniseries, is even more messed up. You know, they talk about in the memorial that's at the Smithsonian, the final episode, that Isaiah was one of a dozen soldiers that was experimented on. In the comic, they set up an entire base, and there were probably hundreds of black soldiers that were brought into this base under the guise of thinking they were going to war. And then at one point in the book, they gather the whole camp up with buses, and they say, okay, half of you get on buses. And this is like hundreds of soldiers, not a dozen, hundreds. And that's their experimental pool. It's half of the base. And the half that didn't get on the buses, they just shoot them. And then they tell everybody that they died in a freak accident, an explosion on the base. So that's why I said the graphic novel is just way more messed up than the history that you get in the series. So that's why I was pretty surprised when they went there. but I'm glad they did, because I think it's a good parallel, even though it's a bit more over the top than what happened with the Red Tails and the Tuskegee experiments. But there's a lot of stuff that people don't learn about in schools that they need to. So, so there's that. Um, the, the new uniform that he gets. Here's what I do like about it. I mean, visually, the patterns and stuff are pretty close to what he has in the comics. And I like the idea that this Captain America, is running around in Wakandan tech. So, it's a little ironic that the symbol of America is running around with Wakandan African technology. But the suit itself, I kind of hope it gets some redo whenever they do the cinematic versions and stuff, because it looks puffy. Especially when you see him compared to his Falcon suit, which is, I think it helps that it's short sleeve, so it's more form fitting and stuff. But the Captain America version of his suit just looks puffy to me. There's some weird costume elements that I think are meant to emphasize a certain silhouette, but end up I just realized something when you draw on Winter Soldier's arm. It's like lava. If you ever look at like photos of lava at night with the black and the gold and the glow, it's like lava. Sorry, mental tangent. But yeah, so the suit, at least the show version of it, just feels a little puffy. I'm not sure if anybody else sees that or not. Might just be me. And if it is, that's fine. Anything else about Sam that people think I should talk about before I jump into Bucky? We'll start off with Sam, because the show is very much Sam's show, even though it's called Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You can't look at the show and think it's a 50-50 show. It's definitely like an 80-20 show. It's like mostly Sam's story, which is fine, but just be prepared to know that going in. Soft white or hard white? Soft white. Want to become famous by followers and viewers? No thanks. I think I want to become famous, first of all, and two, if I did, I don't think I'd want to do it by having to buy followers and viewers. I'd rather be organic. One nice thing when you work on the tone paper, when you put white down, it just pops that much more. So it's really hard to get like nice bright pop on white paper. You have to darken everything up around it. But since the paper itself is already darker, you end up with some really nice pops when you add white. But yeah, so the story being mostly a Sam story. makes sense that the other characters don't get as much play. But now Bucky, they did give Bucky some closure on his Winter Soldier stuff, although they still call him Winter Soldier. So it was kind of funny when I watched that end card where it says Captain America and the Winter Soldier. It's like, hey, can't Bucky shed his name too? It's like, would have been funny to see like Captain America and a White Wolf, but then again, he's kind of on Wakanda's shit list right now, so maybe calling the White Wolf would work anyway. But it was nice that they gave Bucky some closure and some. It's hard for me to say redemption, but I'll use the term because that's probably what most people think of it as. So that going forward, he doesn't have as much looming over him as far as his past. Show some hint of detail in there. So we talk about Bucky. It's interesting when you look at the cinematic history, because I guess Sebastian Stan had auditioned to be Captain America, and kind of got second prize as Bucky. And when you watch the first Avenger, you never know how much they're going to actually bring forward into future stories. It's one of the marvelous things about Marvel, no pun intended, is how they've been able to do these long-form narrative stories through multiple movies, basically. So when they do Sebastian Stan in as Bucky Barnes, obviously the comic book readers are wondering, ooh, will he become so and so down the road? But you can't bet on it. It's a movie. Who knows where they're going to be in 10 years or even 5 years. So the fact that they were able to actually pull off things like bringing Bucky in as the Winter Soldier, just in the next movie, was pretty good. And Sebastian Stan, as he's proven in this show, he's a likable guy. He plays a likable guy. He seems like a likable guy. He plays a likable character. So to see him as the Winter Soldier getting some love is a nice touch. I'm just putting some white in here to try and soften up the skin tone with some highlight bumps. So I'm going to put the stream link again, but it is in the notes. But if you want to come in and talk, you can. And you're obviously welcome to put stuff in chat, but nobody wants to say anything to this. So they make me talk to myself. Let me get something to drink since I am talking to myself. So when we see Sebastian Stan in the first Avenger, and then to see him come full swing into the Winter Soldier here, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they've done a really good job giving his character some growth. They did do some kind of cop-out stuff in the show, like at the very end where he's supposed to be making amends and letting was it Yuri, I think was the old man's name, whose son he had killed in the Winter Soldier mission. They kind of copped out by not actually having the conversation. They just set up the scene and then cut away, and then they cut back later to show the old gentleman in the cafe with the young Japanese girl. And you don't know what, other than confessing to killing his son, you don't know what Winter Soldier said to the man. If he made it better anyhow, And from a writing perspective, I kind of don't blame him, because that's a hard scene to write. I'm just trying to think. You think, what would you have said to make it okay? How do you tell somebody you killed their kid? It was just part of the job. So it was a cop out, but I get it, because I'm not sure how you would sell it and make it palatable. So you say, hey, look, it all works out, and he may have lost his friend, but he was able to give the old man some closure, and he got some closure himself by admitting to it. But it's just it's telling that they didn't actually show the scene; they just set it up and then cut away. But again, I get it. I don't know how you would write it and make it work, make it palatable. So it's just short. But the relationship between Bucky and Sam throughout the course of the show is kind of hit or miss. Because you get they were on the run for a couple years after Civil War, and you kind of wonder, how much of this is like a brotherly rivalry, how much is real antagonism, because it's not real clear the way it's portrayed. Call this one for the ladies. Yeah, and for some guys too. I mean, I was thinking of the metaphor being like things are looking bright, kind of. You're gonna shade your eyes. What's that song? The future's so bright, I gotta wear shades, kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm going for here. It's for Bucky. The future's so bright, he's gotta shade his eyes. And this one looks much better than the first. I'll embarrass myself again. Let me pull out that first one. This is the first piece I did, and it is horrendous. Other than the fact that I got some good ideas on how to do the arm. His head is too big. It doesn't look like Stan. The body's out of proportion. I was trying to do a shading technique with the cross hatching. It didn't work for me. But you look at these side by side, you see the anatomy's a little bit better, the shading's a little bit better, the drawing's a little bit better, coloring's a little bit better, just a little bit better. What do you guys think? You're not going to say nothing, are you? All right. So let's see. So Bucky getting some closure and getting to move on, I think, is more than closure. I think Bucky's just getting at a point where he can move on with the story. I have a few sketches started up. If you'd like to see one, we can work on one. Any character you'd like to see in particular worked on? I think I'll start on Io. One thing I do want to start is to try to have some reference handy. Basics, but I'm not going to try and draw this like really tight. This one I'm going to use watercolors as watercolor paper. So erasing out some of the excess lines. We'll try to keep this really loose. As I was saying, we talk about Bucky being able to move on. And we get the newer characters that were shown in this show, with John Walker being the new Captain America. And you got to give Wyatt Russell credit. He did a great job because everybody hated the character, and that was his job. His job was to make a character that wasn't a bad character per se, but just that you dislike the character just because he's not Cap and he's not Sam. And I think Wyatt Russell did a good job there. Let's keep this very loose here. And it's funny. I've only seen Wyatt Russell in 2 movies, or 2 shows. Obviously, this one and Overlord, which was the James Gunn World War II kind of horror zombie kind of movie. But the funny thing is, the zombies in the movie are essentially Nazi super soldiers. So it's kind of funny that the 2 shows I know him from are dealing with super soldiers of some sort, and it almost becomes, when you put the 2 movies together, it almost becomes, you can't beat them, join them kind of thing. just kind of doing this loosely. Not as tight of a drawing as the Bucky one that was just done. Forgot to talk. Someone's talking to me. On a side tangent, the scene with the Dora Milaje guard that takes John Walker's shield, or shield from John Walker, was probably my favorite scene in the show. Anyway, John Walker. So we talk about, this is where we talk about the political stuff, because I briefly mentioned, like what makes a good soldier doesn't necessarily make a good enforcer, good law enforcement kind, or and that I want to say law enforcement because that's really the corollary I think that the writers drew there. John is kind of the proxy law enforcement. Just excess water out, sorry. But here's the thing: is like when you look at John Walker, even though he's a flawed character, you're not. I don't think you're intended to think that he's a bad man. Not necessarily. He's not necessarily a bad guy. Flawed, certainly, but and obviously not the right temperament for the role he's being thrust into. But I don't think you're supposed to take away that he's a bad man. He's not evil. He's just a different type of soldier, a more classical soldier where, and I have to get into Hoskins too when I talk about John because I'm prior military, as I mentioned at the top, but I'm enlisted. Or I was enlisted. I was chief in the Navy, and Hoskins is a sergeant major, which is a senior enlisted type in the Army and the Marines. So he would have been an E9. So two things that I get from that is. John Walker being a captain, he's probably, if you were to map this out in kind of a real world setting, he was probably in the military for 6 years, somewhere around there, to be a captain. And Hoskins being a sergeant major was a career, would have been career military. So he'd probably been in the military, 15 years or more. And the senior enlisted folks, this is why I kind of like this, is having him assigned with, having Lamar assigned with John Walker. One of the unofficial job descriptions of the senior enlisted folks, like the sergeant majors, is to train junior officers. So that would be part of the role that he would take on. as not only being the partner to John Walker, but also being kind of a mentor and the voice. And you see that in a couple scenes where he's like when Sam wants to try talking to Harley, and John's not having any of it. But Lamar says, well, if he can succeed, then it would save a lot of problems down the road. So you see that Lamar being kind of the voice of reason. And I can't talk too much about Lamar because they really didn't delve too much into him in the show itself. They didn't give you much on his character. You don't even see his family until kind of after the fact, down the road. It's a whole different set of discussions, I think. But you know, being prior military, like I said, it was nice to see this combination of a senior officer or a senior enlisted person with a junior officer, you know, and the senior enlisted kind of being the voice of reason and almost a mentor trainer kind of thing. I really probably should use a smaller brush for a lot of this, but just trying to keep loose. Just kind of wanted to have kind of an illustrated look to it, not a fine drawing or a sharp detailed drawing. But so anyway, John Walker, like I said, we get the impression he's a flawed individual, but he's not necessarily a bad individual, which is, you know, if you come away saying that he's a bad guy, I feel like you missed something. He's a soldier for sure. It's over here, just kind of bounce light. But I don't really get the impression that he was intended to be a bad guy. Like I said, definitely flawed. Definitely got that. But not, strictly speaking, bad. The few nuggets that you get from him, like when he's talking to Lamar about taking the serum, like would you take it? And then they get into a little bit of his awards for his Medal of Honor, and him talking about being the worst days of his life and how many people he could have saved if he'd had the serum. And, you know, him basically saying, you know, the things he did to earn those Medals of Honor weren't necessarily good things. You know, they weren't. And that kind of goes into what I was saying about, you know, what makes a good soldier doesn't necessarily make you good for other things. You know. But again, I have to emphasize, I don't think he was meant to be a bad man. Just not one suitable for the task he was given. And that's how I interpret it anyway. If you got a different opinion, you're welcome to throw it in the chat or up in the stream and tell me. And again, why Russell did a great job, because he made a character that, you know, for some reason you just didn't like him. You know, they gave him lines here and there that kind of, you know, are on the face of them kind of innocuous, but in the context of the show, they become you know, contentious. You get a smaller brush. And then when you see the snap in Walker, again, this is the thing with the acceptable damages, acceptable collateral damages in the military environment. Like him killing that flag smasher while, you know, unacceptable in most regards. When you look at it from a military perspective, you can look at the gentleman as an enemy combatant, and it becomes more palatable to look at it that way, or if you look at it that way. So, I mean, as a viewer, we can say, okay, he snapped. But in the scheme of things, it's like, well, it was a military combatant. So you can see how they would excuse it. Maybe getting some therapy for his anger issues or something, but not necessarily would they have drummed him out like they did in the show. Because there is a certain level of acceptability to collateral damage in that, in a wartime, in a military mindset. I'm not saying it's the right thing to have, it's just the reality that happens. Hey, Nobu, you want to come in? I got to catch a little bit of you and Lorenzo. I'm kind of hopping in now because I was either working or trying to get ready for this. We're doing yard work. The link should be in the description or in the chat. Grab some black, some highlights into the neck thingies. So we talked about Walker, we talked about Bucky Sam, touched on Hoskins. The scene where John finally confronts Carly at the end there, and she says, "I didn't mean to kill him. He didn't mean anything." It's that was a bit painful. It's like they gave Carly some Carly needed some public speaking and communication classes because the idea she conveyed. I mean, I get what she was saying that in her frame of reference, Hoskins wasn't important. When you're trying to talk someone down from not killing you, that probably wasn't the best thing to say. Let's see. I'm do the eyes with the pen. Probably that's just assume I'm doing that. Um, Carly Morgenthau, interesting villain. It's interesting how they set her up to be sympathetic and then just kind of like descend into crazy. Like at the in the final episode where she's with her other super soldiers and she's trying to do the one world and everybody's supposed to chime in and say one people and nobody says anything for a minute. She has to like repeat it before they hop on board. You just see in that moment she's talking about it's okay if we die for the cause, the cause will live on after us. They're just kind of thinking, well, I'm not really in a hurry to die, Carly. You see the look on some of her followers, like, oh, she's crazy. So that was a nice moment of what did we get ourselves into, kind of. Use a straight brown and put in some random details here to try and sell this armor with leather stuff. Too much water on my brush. Oh, there's Nobu. Aloha, Nobu.
Hello.
So I'll kill the music here so I can hear you. So I've kind of talked about Sam and Bucky and John. Started on Carly. Anybody you want to talk about or catch up?
Hold on. Let me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I haven't seen was it the season finale? The last episode that came out?
Yeah. You haven't seen it yet?
No.
You sure you want to see it? Because I'm spoiling the hell out of
it. I'm not spoiler sensitive.
Okay. I'm just.
Yeah, but I think it's weird that what's the dude's name the actor who plays the new Captain America?
It's Wyatt Russell.
Yeah. He's getting a lot of hate, isn't he?
Yeah, because people are stupid.
I think he's great. I mean, he plays the character really well. I mean, he's kind of supposed to be polarizing, right?
Yeah, and that, I kind of mentioned that when we were talking about Wyatt. It's like the fact that he's getting that hate, kind of an indication that he's doing a good job as an actor.
Yeah, very true.
Weird, kind of a weird compliment, but it's.
I mean, yeah, you play somebody who's supposed to be very polarizing, and people who hate you, then.
I'm gonna have to let this area dry a bit before I mess with it. Darker the better. But yeah, I mean, Wyatt Russell did a good job and you can see, like the mental stresses and stuff.
That seems to be the new trope when it comes to anything to do with like war or combat, like people having to portray the characters dealing with the PTSD or the emotional trauma or anything like that, to make them more relatable in entertainment now.
Yeah, I guess I can see that. I don't know if I'm not sure if it makes them more relatable, but I think there was, for so many years, there was like no acknowledgement of PTSD, and they used to call it shell shock,
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's kind of just one of those swings of the pendulums. Like, okay, we know this stuff goes on. Let's talk about it.
Well, my friend was telling me that in a lot of cases, especially with Marines who are an invading force compared to the Army who are an occupying force, when they diagnose them with PTSD, it's actually most of the time it's incorrect. It's actually a mild traumatic brain injury, like the kick from their rifle or like that kind of stuff. It jostles the brain and it throws off their hormones.
Mm.
And that's kind of what makes them more emotional and erratic. And it's a good and a bad thing because it's a physical abnormality in the brain that can be corrected through like TRT or HGH. But you have to get, the balance right for every individual. But PTSD is psychological, so there's no like hormones that can correct it. It's psychological compared to physical. It's a lot more complicated than like just PTSD. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like similar symptoms of the two issues.
Yeah, she was saying the symptoms are very similar, but the causes are extremely different, and you have to treat them very differently. So it's yeah.
And you look at that, like Bucky has PTSD too. He has the nightmares every night. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's kind of the implication, I think. Um, but when we look at Carly, they touch upon this again with the conversation that Hoskins and Walker have about taking the serum, and they kind of fall back to that Erskine comment of it makes you more of the person you already were.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the implication that Carly was prone to how she wound up.
Mm. So it kind of enhances the personality that already exists.
Yeah,
Like it multiplies it.
it's like that. It's like that Richard Pryor joke, about doing drugs. It's like, it enhances your personality. It's like, well, what if you're already an asshole? What if you're an asshole to begin with, kind of. Although we don't get the impression that she was an asshole, but I would say she was like prone to zealotry, kind of.
Mm.
But it's interesting how they started off making her kind of sympathetic, and then they take the turn where when she blows up that warehouse with people still in it, and then she just kind of gets gradually worse from there. And what about Zemo? You talk about Zemo. Um, the third episode where Zemo breaks out
Mm-hmm.
was my least favorite episode of the show, because this is it's hard for me to shut my adult brain off, right? And I'm looking at it, you going, you can't trust him. Don't trust him. You can't trust him. Don't trust him. This is a bad idea. It's not going to work out. The whole time. It's hard for me to turn my adult brain off, because Zemo is not trustworthy.
It's it's another guy who played that role very well.
Yeah, Daniel Bruhl is the actor that played Zemo, and it's like, I don't have anything against the character. My whole issue with that episode was, you can't trust him. Don't do this. So it was hard for me to get past that.
Their bad judgment.
Yeah. I'm gonna let this set off the side, and I'll come with any touch-ups. Who should I work on next? Zemo here. I'll do Zemo since we're talking about Zemo right now. So, the Zemo, when I watched Civil War, I had mixed feelings about Zemo. He obviously wasn't. He's not the comic book version of Zemo by any means. And certainly not any version that I know. But arguably he achieved his goal, in breaking up the Avengers. But the goal itself seemed kind of weird to me. Like, I can see you wanting to destroy the Avengers, but just breaking them up. I mean, they're still out there. They still have powers. So the whole premise of the movie was a little weird to me. Now, as far as being a bad guy, I mean, he obviously achieved his goal. But it's just one of those. The premise itself was like, I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, it seemed. It seemed like that whole movie was just a setup for the next movie.
Broke my leg. Darn it. I'm gonna mute myself just for a second so you don't have to turn my pencil sharpener. In the back, sorry, the pencil sharpener is really obnoxiously loud. But yeah, so Daniel Bruhl in this show, I mean, I like the character, even if I didn't like, the reason for him being there. I can't argue with that. He did a good job. It's interesting that they're humanizing him more. And you saw the dancing that went viral, right?
The what?
His little dance clip that went viral.
No, I don't think I saw that.
This is the marketing folks at Marvel are pretty crazy sometimes. There was after I think it was episode 4 in Madripoor, and there's like a scene where they're in a nightclub. It might have been episode 3. But and it's only for a split second, but Zemo is like kind of dancing in the background. Just for, I mean, like I said, it's just for a second. And then, people on social media are saying, release the Zemo cut of the dancing. And Marvel responded by releasing an hour-long loop of Zemo dancing. And it was basically just that clip on repeat for an hour with music put in the back. And that went viral.
That's it shows they have a good sense of humor.
Yeah. So I mean, you can still find that out there on YouTube and stuff. The Zemo cut, just him dancing for an hour. So this is kind of a burgundy.
It's gonna be the new hamsterdance.com.
While it's a goofy thing to put out there, I mean, you got them pressed for a couple days doing the Zemo cut. And then Zemo's butler, who nobody paid any attention to the point that when he shows up in the last episode, and this was a spoiler for you, no, I'm sorry. When he shows up in the last episode and blows up the remaining Flag Smashers, people are going, "Who the hell's that old guy?" It's like he just pops up out of nowhere. It's like, "Oh, that's Zemo's butler." And that earned him the nickname of Evil Alfred, like Batman's butler. Evil Alfred.
Well, he showed up in the same episode Zemo showed up in.
Yeah, he's the one that brings him onto the plane.
Yeah,
and flies him to Madripoor. But it's like he was such a minor. Nobody thought about the butler. Like, should we be paying attention to this character? So that when he shows back up, and it's like people are going, "Who the hell's that old guy?"
So the Flag Smashers are gone?
As far as we know. I mean, at least the superpowered ones. Now the movement itself may still, live on. But Zemo made sure that there were no more super soldiers running around other than Bucky and Walker. And I don't know if he's, I mean, they do kind of patch up with Bucky in episode 5, but Zemo still doesn't like super soldiers, so I don't know if this is going to come back, later on, dealing with Bucky and Walker. Kind of have to wait and see on that one. Let's see.
So did Walker, he took the serum?
Walker did take the serum. That's in the episode where they killed Hoskins. When he goes to try and rescue Hoskins, you can see that he's taking the serum at that point because he's like bending the pipe that the one Flag Smasher is trying to beat him with. And he throws the shield so hard it embeds into the wall. So there's something a little different about the dude, right?
Like when he first showed up, they're fighting on top of that truck.
Yeah, he was holding his own way too well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was like, did he take the serum already?
We're not the only ones that thought that. It's like I'm trying to figure out how they justified that. But I think the story may have changed somewhat too, Yeah. Because it started pre-COVID and then had to stop and then resume. So it's one of the shows that got affected by COVID.
Because I'm not familiar with the comics or anything, so this is really my first time dealing with these characters.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good. That sometimes that's a good thing. Because you see the hardcore fans of stuff that just get upset when it's not the characters they were expecting or how they wanted the characters to be. Sometimes I think it's good to go into something with less knowledge.
Yeah, but I'm not one of those people who gets upset that it's not exactly like the comic, I like to see the differences sometimes where it's like, okay, that I can see why they made that change, because it worked in the comics, but it wouldn't have worked on a theatrical release or TV show.
Because I have had that problem in the past. I've kind of learned to get past it now, but when I watch Man of Steel, when I watched it for the first time, it's like I like Henry Cavill, however you say his name, but the character just didn't feel like Superman to me because the the story decisions they made.
I still haven't seen Man of Steel.
You live such a sheltered life. So, I mean, I've learned to get past that now. It's like if something doesn't click with me, I'm not going to go on a tirade and bitch about it or anything like that. I just like, okay, well, it didn't work for me. Move on. You just accept it. You know, not everything is for everyone. You know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when they make certain decisions for certain reasons, it kind of bugs me. Like throwing in a character, like purely for like as a MacGuffin to move the plot forward, and like that seems a little lazy. You know, it seems like they could have moved the plot along in a more organic way, but.
Can you give me a for instance? So what's an example of that happening?
Nothing specific comes to mind. But I understand, like, when people were complaining about Godzilla versus King Kong, how the people were just there to move the plot along, and there was no real depth to them.
But that story makes no sense.
Yeah. But when it comes to a movie like that, it's not a Coen Brothers movie. You're there to see the kaiju fight,
right?
You know.
And that's why you know I watch and go, the story makes no sense, but it was fun. It looks cool.
Yeah, you know, you don't want to see an Oscar-winning movie like when it comes to Godzilla versus King Kong.
I wouldn't mind, but I don't expect it.
You want to see the
performance in there. That's great, but you don't go to a movie like that expecting that.
Yeah, you know, you expect a giant monkey to beat up a giant lizard.
I think black. I don't think black. I think black will pop out too much. You do a little gray. A fabric marker. So I'm using a warm gray multi-liner instead of a black one. I think the black would be too overpowering.
It's a gray Copic?
Yeah, gray Copic multi-liner. You've never seen the color multi-liners?
Yeah.
So it's a warm gray. So I get a nice hard outline, but it's not as jarring as a black one would be, you know.
What's the next Marvel movie that's coming out? Is it Black Widow?
Yeah, Black Widow's the next movie. The next show is going to be Loki. So Loki, as far as what show, Loki comes out first. So Loki will be out in June, and then Black Widow will come out in July. feel like I should be talking about Zemo more, right? So the difference you see from Civil War, he's dealing with Black Panther, and what you get in this show, it almost feels like two different characters to me. Like this Zemo doesn't feel like the same one that you get in Civil War, in my opinion.
Yeah, the one in Civil War definitely wasn't as likable.
Yeah.
He seemed.
Now, as far as a nod to the comics is, the one scene where he puts on his mask finally in Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is a nice nod for us comic geeks. And they showed him kicking ass, so you're reminded that he's not just this criminal mastermind; he's actually a field operative as well. He can go out and do the dirty work himself, just because he chose not to. Like, Ayo, Io. That's a little quick. Sharon Carter. Okay, now this is here's another spoiler for you, obviously, since you haven't watched the final. But she is revealed as the Power Broker. And I think this is the one I take issue with, but it's just personal opinion because everything we've seen of the character up to this point would give you no indication that she would fall this far, to become a criminal, underground criminal overlord kind of thing. And then,
So wait, what was the reveal with her?
They talk about the Power Broker, right, in the show.
Yeah.
Sharon is revealed to be the Power Broker.
Oh.
So there's a couple issues I had with that. One is it just seemed kind of out of character from what we've been given in the past. So somewhere we're missing some story. And then if I just go with the premise, okay, she's the power broker, then some of the actions within the story don't seem very bright, right? Like if she's got the doctor that made the super soldier serum, and she leads Sam, Bucky, and Zemo to this doctor, knowing that Zemo has a hard on against super soldiers, that doesn't seem like a real bright move. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but it's like, what is your end game if you're making money selling this serum? You know, or you're using the serum to create your own like private army of enforcers and stuff. What is the logic in taking someone you know has it out for super soldiers to the doctor that made the serum? I'm lost. So
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the smartest thing to do.
So even if I buy the premise that she is the power broker, it's like some of the actions within the story don't seem to make sense. That's why I was kind of hoping that she wasn't going to be the power broker, even though the theory started pretty early on that she was the power broker. Because of that like story plot points that just don't add up. And then just like with WandaVision, there's already like crazy theories and stuff like how she could be the power broker. You know that there's a secret invasion show in the works.
I did not know that. Makes sense.
Okay, well, there's a secret invasion show in the works, which is going to be, obviously the Skrull. So already the people are suggesting she might be a Skrull. So, yeah, I suppose that could be, but I don't know. It's hard for me to like jump on board any of the Skrull arguments at this point.
Yeah, it's fun to like look at those fan theories. I never take any of them seriously though.
But I mean, if they end up making her a Skrull, that might actually save this plot to me because the heel turn to having Sharon Carter as the power broker just seemed out of left field to me. Even if you go with the story premise of her feeling abandoned by everybody after the events of Civil War and Endgame and whatnot. Kind of fun. Like those little character pieces. But it was nice to see Agent 13 or Sharon Carter again. And like I was a fan of the show Agent Carter with Haley Atwell. So I think that might be another reason that that kind of rubs me along a little the wrong way. It's like you're taking the legacy of Sharon Carter, but I know it's all fictional, so it doesn't matter. Little character piece of Walker. I mean, I have notes down for all the characters. The counselor, I can't remember the counselor's name. Those counseling sessions seem very odd. I'm not sure how they. I haven't been to a counselor, but I can't picture them going that way. It just seemed like an odd way to do counseling. I'm working on a walker piece right now, and I'm putting a Medal of Honor behind him to kind of give that homage. I'm slowly learning to be looser with watercolor. Very hard for me to do. Using a bigger brush forces me to be looser though. I just can't control it as much as I would normally.
Hmm.
Getting to meet Sam's family, Sarah Wilson, I like that whole setup. Like when they go to the bank for the first time, trying to get the loan, and you get the reality. You don't have any income for the last 5 years because you didn't exist, but you know.
That's the banks for you, right? Doesn't matter who you are.
That's a hell of a catch-22, right? Like, you didn't exist and you have no income. I don't care if you have a job right now, you have contracts, but you can't prove you had any income for the last 5 years. And that's another nice thing that I'm glad to see the MCU hasn't shied away from, is the aftermath of, what they call it, the blip. So
Yeah.
it'll always be the stamp in my head, but
What kind of brush are you using?
it's just like a sumi brush, a small sumi or calligraphy brush.
Yeah.
It holds a lot of water, and I can't control it very well, so that's why it's good for me to use for stuff like this. It forces me to stay loose.
I've been trying to get better at using brushes.
Using what brushes?
Just brushes in general. Like I've had the Pentel pocket brush for a while. And I had an Amazon gift card, so I picked up a Kuretake brush pen, which I really like because the bristle tip is it's a bit shorter, so it's easier to control.
Right. I have issue controlling brush pens too, which is why for inking I now use a Tombow calligraphy pen.
Tombow?
Yeah, Tombow.
That's a nib brush tip, right?
Right, but it's a flexible nib.
Yeah. That's not refillable, is it?
It's not, but they're only a couple bucks each, so it's like. So this is the Tombow calligraphy pen. So you can do your thin lines. You can do the thick to thin. And for people like me that have heavy hands where it's hard to control a brush, this is much easier for me to control, especially when I'm trying to do the thick to thin stuff.
Yeah.
and back again. So, and it's very friendly with marker and watercolor. Like you don't have to really let it dry, or it doesn't take long to dry, I should say. So you can go over pretty quickly with marker and pen or watercolor. So we're talking about Sarah Wilson and the kids. It was nice to see them. It was nice to see kids in the MCU. Half the time it feels like there aren't any kids in the MCU. I'm trying to think of the shows that I've seen kids in. It's like Ant-Man had his daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the Avengers, you got Clint Barton's kids. But both those were just, so quick. Clint would get blipped out.
Yeah, they didn't really interact too much.
And,
Tony Stark's kid.
Yeah, but like they just barely. It's kind of a throwaway almost. I mean, he's got a daughter, but you don't really get. You got one scene with her, I think, right, where he's talking about the hamburgers or whatever, right?
Yeah, at the very end. Well, there are a couple of scenes, but yeah, it wasn't much.
I mean, and even in this show, there still wasn't much with her kids, but like I said, it's just nice to be reminded there are kids in the MCU. Not many, but there are some. And then my favorite character in the show, which I haven't talked about yet, only briefly, was Isaiah Bradley. And I'm going to say this again because I already said it once in the stream, but if you haven't already read Red, White, and Black, the comic mini series of the Isaiah Bradley story, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, because he was one of the people who took up the Captain America mantle, right?
Right. But the Red, White, and Black storyline is his origin story, and like if you can freeze frame in the last episode and read like 2/3 of the display that they put up in the Smithsonian Forum, and it's sad, but it's nowhere near as fucked up as the comic.
What happened in the comic?
Well, it's like they set up an entire fake military base and brought in these black soldiers, like hundreds of them, because they knew they were going to do these experiments trying to recreate the super soldier serum. And they needed lots of bodies to experiment with. So when it's time to start the experiments, they take the base and they muster up all the troops, and they have some buses on standby, but the buses are only enough to hold like half the troops. So they load up, so they muster up everybody. They say, order half of you get on the buses. So half of them get on the buses. And as the buses are rolling away, the people on the buses can hear gunfire. And what had happened is they gunned down the remaining recruits they had. Because this was all off the books kind of, experiment. And they ended up just telling the people that their sons died in an explosion on the base. Hundreds of black soldiers, right? And then the experiments are going, and in the show they say he was one of 12 people that were experimented on. They said it was literally hundreds in the story in the book, and the failure rate was very high, and the failure rate usually was a fatality. And if it wasn't a fatality, they just put them out. So, like I said, it's just a messed up story. It's playing upon like the Tuskegee and the Red Tails incidents in the real world, but it's amplified for the comic.
Yeah. That sounds really depressing. I don't think I'm gonna read that one.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's kind of a happy ending for Isaiah at the end, but it's a fucked up story. No doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it sounds really interesting, but like sometimes like it's
yeah, no, I get it.
like Grave of the Fireflies. That's an amazing movie. I'm not gonna watch it again. You know?
Well, that one I would watch again, but I'd have to be in the right mood.
No,
I feel what you're saying. No, they're like I feel like a way like Schindler's List. Schindler's List is a great movie. It's emotionally draining.
I just seeing that the brother and the sister and okay, Schindler's List. What was the significance of the girl in the red dress?
The significance?
Yeah, there was that one scene where there was that girl in the red dress.
As opposed to the rest of the movie being black and white, is that what you mean?
Yeah, that was the only thing that was in color.
Yeah.
Do you know, like,
I don't know specifically what symbolism is. I would read it as being, the fact that they were killing children, but they didn't discriminate against age. Um, but I don't know if that's what's intended or not.
that's that's kind of what I thought too, but I also thought maybe there was a more personal or a deeper meaning or
There could be, and I'm sure there's probably a thesis online somewhere that explains it. But yeah, that's a show I'm in no hurry to ever watch again, even though it was a great movie. Uh, the Punisher TV series, same way. I like the Punisher TV series, but it's brutal and emotionally draining. I don't feel like ever watching it again.
the
So yeah, I get what you're coming from. It's like, Grave with Fireflies is a depressing movie. I definitely get that. So the Isaiah Bradley story in the comics is messed up. It's more messed up than what's in the show, but I think that's probably a good thing they didn't go that far in the show. I think that would have been not as well received.
yeah.
But this is one of the things like the corollaries with the real world is, we look at like some people being resistant or hesitant to taking the vaccine because of like the the syphilis experiments that went on in the black communities where it's that same kind of parallel, and it's interesting that a lot of people aren't aware of certain situations until they see these stories pop up in media. It's like when you watched the Watchmen TV series, and they talked about the Oklahoma, or sorry, did I get the city wrong? Kansas City, but the one massacre of the
Oh yeah. The was it Kansas City? I know what you're talking about, but yeah, I
it's,
can't remember.
it's like we're getting our history from media now, from shows and stuff that should be taught in schools, but it's not being exposed.
I think that might be kind of due to outrage culture on the left and the right. You know, like no matter what you teach in school to the kids as fact from our history, like somebody's going to get upset about it and there's going to be a big thing.
Yeah. Well,
It's like even if you're just teaching somebody about something that happened, you don't say it was correct or it was wrong or you agree with it or you support it or you don't like it, or it's like just the fact that you're talking about it in a factual way. It doesn't matter if it's your opinion or what. It's like they're going to be upset about it, you know.
yeah, there's probably some truth to that. That's why I said that when I posted my title card for this stream. I said this one may get political just because of the nature of the show. Too close. Work this out. Can I make this a happy little accident or not? The other thing, I've been working with watercolors on these streams and stuff because I want to, like, if and when we get back to a convention scene, I want to take watercolors instead of markers. This is so much easier to travel with.
You could just you have a watercolor pen, right? Like those the Koi or the Pentel ones.
The pens, no. I don't have the watercolor pens. I have, acrylic-based markers. I have all kinds of acrylic-based markers between Posca and Montana.
Yeah. I have a couple Montana paint pens.
Yeah, I like those. They're refillable.
The paint is really good quality too. It's it holds up against a lot of stuff.
That one dry, and then we'll come in and add some elements. What time is the draw and bid stream? Our time? 7? I want to make sure I finish up in time for that in case anybody's going to go over there. I don't know if I'm going to watch it or not.
I think it was 8, or that might have been California time.
10 p.m. California time, isn't it? Are we 3 hours difference now?
It might have been, yeah. I think it's 7 or 8. Let me check. I think Mog posted about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course she posted about it. It's...
All right, I'll go on to this piece. I have one more big piece I'll start tightening up. Let these dry. Did this little homage here. Isaiah Bradley, old cap, new cap. It hasn't happened yet, so I'm giving Sam a meal there.
Nice.
start inking that in and tighten it up. Figure out how I want the colors. What did you think of the Flag Smasher storyline, as far as them like wanting to go back to how the blip was when half the world was gone? It's the Thanos right crowd.
I was interesting. It might have been, yeah. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I think I found the.
You found what?
The draw and bid.
I'm pretty sure it's 10 p.m. California time, which would be 7 p.m. here.
Oh, it starts at 7 p.m. PST. Oh no, that's the submission deadline. The live stream is at 8 p.m. PST, and it ends at 10 p.m.
8 p.m. PST, so that's 5 o'clock here.
Yeah, because there's a 3-hour difference.
Yeah. So I'll try to wrap up my stream by 5, so I can go over there and check them out.
Because it is 3 hours now because daylight savings is over.
Yep.
Spring forward, right? Fall back. So
3 hours difference.
3 hours.
Yeah, the whole premise in it, I've heard that they originally wanted to have the Flag Smashers a little even more hardcore, and there was apparently a virus storyline, where they were going to try and eliminate half the population like Thanos did. But I guess the virus storyline in the pandemic didn't sit well.
Yeah, I can see that.
Being a little problematic, yeah.
Yeah.
So they changed it to the GRC storyline, the Global Repatriation Council. Mixed feelings about that. Like I said, I'm glad that they're addressing stuff from the snap. I don't know if this was a great way to do it, but I think I liked what they did in WandaVision, with Maria's flashbacks to everybody reappearing in the hospital. This one, it's with the people that I guess whose lives improved because of the snap, suddenly being forced back into or relegated back into obscurity, kind of.
It's interesting seeing a different perspective on what happened, like some people being affected by it in a positive way, or they can perceive it as being positive.
Right.
Like there was in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Was
Hmm.
that the one? There were a couple who um, I think they just started dating, and they both had anger issues, and but like once um, they started helping the community after Hurricane Katrina, like in their bar or whatever, and like they started getting a lot of um, I guess recognition, and things started to go a lot better, and they started getting along a lot better, and like the community really liked them. And but once things started getting back to normal, like everything started like falling apart for them. And I guess it's kind of like that with the Flag Smashers, right? Well, not
Well, okay.
exactly like that,
Well,
but
I think the implication for the Flag Smashers is they were, um, let's say, underprivileged before the snap, and then when half the people go away, there's all these resources available now. So now they're suddenly able to get stuff that they weren't able to before. You know, whether it's housing and food or assistance, stuff like that. So they benefited from the snap in that regard.
yeah. I was just making the comparison of just the positive from a tragedy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like sometimes people perceive it as like, oh, now things are kind of better because of this horrible thing that happened. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise, or however they see it. Do you think it was kind of maybe, well, I
Well,
guess depending
whole
on,
scenario becomes one of those. It's a cool motive, still murder. You know, when you start, it's like you create a motive that's understandable, but that doesn't excuse it.
yeah. And that's kind of what happens nowadays. Like, you know, it's can't count how many times that, like, I understand where you're coming from, but your approach to the situation is, I understand your motives, but the execution of your plan is I don't know if it's the best.
Yep, cool motive, still murder. Let's see. Power broker. That'll be interesting going forward. I can't imagine we're done with the power broker. after this episode or after this series. Especially when you watch the final episode, you'll see that the stinger at the end of the episode is basically setting up something with the power broker. Not exactly sure what, but something. So whether it's secret invasion or something else, we're not done with Sharon Carter's power broker. Which is fine. I mean, I like Emily Van Camp, so I'm glad she still has work.
It'll be cool to see the Skrull again.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him at the end of WandaVision.
I haven't even started WandaVision yet.
Yeah, there's just a quick scene at the end where Monica Rambeau is recruited by the Skrull up in space with Nick Fury.
The Skrull is that was one of the things that people were outraged about in Captain Marvel.
Were they?
Yeah, I was reading this thing. It was like the Skrull aren't they're villains and blah blah blah, and like people are getting really pissed off about it. Like, I don't understand why you're, of all the things to be upset about, why are you upset about this? It's such a silly thing.
Well, you want to get political on that one. I think it's because they make the immigrant story sympathetic.
I don't think I've seen them of the stuff that I was looking at and hearing. They didn't bring that up. It was purely, from what I saw, it was purely like in the comics. That's not how it is. Like, the Skrull are villains.
Reference for suit. Pronounce a reference. I don't tend to draw very tight pencils anymore. So sometimes I have to what was I trying to draw here? That's another thing with doing conventions. My pencils have gotten much looser as a speed technique, so I can get through things faster.
Are you gonna be doing the Kawaii-Con? Was it in August?
Probably.
Was it in August, or am I thinking of something else?
No, it's November.
November. That's what it was.
But yeah, I'll probably end up doing it. I mean, unless there's a major resurgence in the COVID again. I've had my vaccines.
Did you feel any of the side effects after?
Nope. I had the Pfizer and it went fine. So I may be lucky, but I'll take it. Back to my notes here. Oh, the Contessa. You He was in episode 5, I think, right? When they did the trial of John Walker.
Was that
You saw that, right?
was that episode 5?
Yeah, that was episode 5.
I I did watch it. I have to rewatch it because I was working while it was on. So
So, well, after the trial, he meets with Julia Louis-Dreyfus outside. Did you see that or not?
yes,
Okay. So that character is Contessa. I'm not going to say her whole name. It's like Vanessa something or other. Allegra, Montegro. I don't know. I'll just mess it up. So I'm not even going to try. Um, um, Implications for her character going forward, because in the comics, she's got a checkered past as either a rogue Hydra agent or a sleeper agent. Uh, but she was also a Shield agent. She dated Nick Fury at some point. I mean, I haven't read these things, but I follow the news of this kind of stuff. And at one point, she was called Madam Hydra, so it'll be interesting. The other speculation is like she could be setting up for the Thunderbolts, like taking the Osborn role for Thunderbolts, which would make sense for keeping John Walker around. You know the Thunderbolts, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've read any of the Thunderbolt stuff, but I'm aware of them.
So there's speculation that Julia Louis-Dreyfus' character may be filling in that role in the MCU. Because obviously Osborn is a Spider-Man character, which would mean the rights are with Sony.
Yep.
I don't know if that's going to come to fruition or not, but that's an interesting speculation, having the Thunderbolts. Being Zemo winds up at the raft at the end of the show, so that means he's at the disposal of Ross. Secretary Secretary of Defense Ross.
Was Hawkeye part of the Thunderbolts?
I don't remember. But that character, see, and I was kind of hoping that character would turn out to be the power broker. You know, here when we were watching the show, I mean, everybody was guessing that Sharon was going to be the power broker, and I was kind of hoping that she wouldn't be. And the thing that gave me hope that she wouldn't be was, if this is a one series evolution and then that's it, then it doesn't make sense for somebody not in the show not to be the power broker. But if they were to make a season 2, then they could have had the cliffhanger that would have led you into that season. Here's the power broker. But I don't know if there's going to be a season 2 or not. So I guess Sharon being the power broker works. But they did announce that a 4th movie. So there is going to be a Captain America 4 with the guy that wrote this series. I can't remember his name. The light-skinned brother. I look at his fro. He reminds me of everybody's favorite painter. Like that Bob Ross fro. Some other possibilities out of the episode. Oh, hey Jan, how you doing? Bullseye dressed as Hawkeye was part of Thunderbolts. There you go.
Okay.
That's Jan. This is the first time I have Jam on the chat. Jam's an old member of Comic Jam Hawaii from years ago when we first started out, but then he moved over to the mainland. Now we're just on social media together. Torres, the one that's with Falcon in the military. In the comics, Torres takes over the Falcon role. So you get that hint where he tells Torres to keep the broken wings. You know, they could be setting Torres up to be the next Falcon. Get my Isaiah Bradley reference. Here we go. Try and draw that a little closer to reference. Like doing animation, try and draw them on model, try and make it look like them.
You know what is always very jarring when it comes to the Captain America stuff is seeing George St. Pierre playing a villain.
I'm not an MMA guy, but
well, he's just one of the nicest guys. Like, just seeing him put on that mean mug, like, I can't see him being a villain.
Well, I suspect he was probably hired for his martial skills. I don't know enough about him. He's a nice guy, though. That's good to know. Glad to hear that.
I mean, from all the interviews and how he interacts with the other fighters and how he carries himself, very, very respectable. Especially nowadays where it's all about the trash talk and selling the fight and
so dark in there. I can't really tell what's going on in his jawline. I make some stuff up. Jam says he's around. He just doesn't usually say a lot. Reminds me of an old joke. Where, his parents had a child that won't speak. It's like 6 years old and he hadn't said anything yet. And then one day, his mom serves him some soup, and the kid spits it out and goes, "This soup tastes like shit." And they're amazed because he spoke, right? And they're asking him, "Well, you can speak. How come you haven't said anything up to now?" He said, "Well, up to now, the soup's been pretty good." I'm probably telling the joke wrong, but I think the gist is there.
Oh, that was a good one. I liked it.
Bullseye dressed as Hawkeye. So Bullseye was Hawkeye in the Thunderbolts. But that's an interesting prospect though, because if they do Bullseye, there's been the rumor of them reviving Daredevil in the MCU, the Daredevil character, and Bullseye obviously being a Daredevil villain would be an interesting setup. So Torres could be the next Falcon. Madripoor, that's another that location used in the series was an interesting choice because Madripoor is a big mutants location, right?
Mm-hmm. And they can do stuff with the X-Men now, right?
They can. They own Fox, so they've got the rights to the X-Men back. And Carl Lumley as Isaiah Bradley. He killed every scene he was in. Did you ever watch the old Mantis TV show? Carl Lumley was a scientist that built an exoskeleton that let him be a superhero. He was like a paraplegic or in a wheelchair.
That doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah, it wasn't a great show, but it was fun. Cam, you watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I take it? You guys get your jam off. And then Isaiah Bradley's nephew. In the comics, is the one that takes on the mantle of Patriot for the Young Avengers. So there's that dangling thread that they could pull. Dan says, new job, too consuming. Just see clips and reviews here and there. Okay. Well, spoilers. Damn, sorry.
So the all of the shows and the new movies, they're all gonna be part of the same MCU, right?
Yeah, they're all in continuity with the movies.
Okay. Even like the new stuff, like the new Ghost Rider and everything.
I don't think there's going to be a new Ghost Rider, at least no time soon.
Wasn't it? No, I'm sorry, Blade.
Yes, the Blade is.
I don't know why I said Ghost Rider.
Blade is part of the MCU. Well, there was a rumor. Well, they were in development for a Ghost Rider TV show on Hulu, I think.
Didn't he show up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something too?
Right. It was supposed to be that version of Ghost Rider, but
Okay.
it fell through. I think because that was kind of before Disney Plus took off.
Mm.
They were still, holdovers from the ABC shows and stuff. But the MCU has kind of washed its hands of all the ABC Marvel and the Netflix Marvel. It's a shame because I was one of the few people to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from season 1. I watched Agent Carter and like that, and I watched the Inhumans, and okay, the Inhumans wasn't good, but I watched it. Just have to mention it because I did watch all the ABC Marvel stuff and all the Netflix Marvel stuff. So Daredevil was good. Punisher was well done. Iron Fist sucked ass. I blame Scott Buck was the showrunner for Inhumans and Iron Fist, the two, in my opinion, the two worst MCU TV series. And I think the problem is Scott Buck. And, watching Iron Fist in particular, I don't think Scott Buck likes heroes. I think he likes supervillains. He likes the bad guys. Because in both those shows, the bad guys are the most compelling parts of the show.
I did not watch either of them.
Okay.
I was really curious about Iron Fist, though.
I will say I don't think you're missing much.
From what everybody said, yeah, I kind of gathered that. Like, was it Lorenzo who was talking about Iron Fist? And Lorenzo is like one of the most positive, upbeat guys there is, and I don't think he had anything really good to say about Iron Fist. I'm like, okay, that kind of cements it.
That kind of hurt because I had the Iron Fist comics. I liked Iron Fist.
The thing that was really confusing to me about Iron Fist was when people were like saying they're whitewashing. Like, no, the character is supposed to be a white dude who learns, like, that's who he is.
I wouldn't say it was whitewashing. It was an opportunity because there's nothing intrinsically that needs to be intrinsically white about the character. I mean, he was white in the comics. I think what people were saying was they could have made him something else.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the like the Tom Cruise and the Last Samurai thing. Like,
Well,
he,
that is kind of the problem, though, because they're both the kind of the white savior complex kind of, you know.
but the with the Last Samurai, that was the whole story. Was he was a Caucasian dude who was learning about Japanese culture.
Yeah.
Like he was completely against it at first, and then he learned what it was about, and he respected it, and he learned about it, and he, yeah, he respected it at the end, and
The thing with the problem with those kind of movies though is the implication that they need white validation.
I
That
didn't,
said, that said, I enjoyed Samurai, The Last Samurai.
I didn't really get that from the movie. I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention.
No, it's just it may not have been in the movie itself, but it's just that kind of narrative.
Mm.
But that said, I did enjoy The Last Samurai. It's what was the one I watched that was really ridiculous recently with Matt Damon?
Oh, the Great Wall or something.
Just was it just The Wall or The Great Wall? But yes, that one.
That one was another one. Like people were hating on Damon for it, right? But like he
But
was asked to be in that role by the Chinese, right? So it was their choice. They wanted his name in the movie. But that one was it really ridiculous?
I thought it was.
In a good way or a bad way?
It was entertaining, but the story was ridiculous. So I guess in a okay way, not necessarily good or bad, but it was. It's kind of like watching the Godzilla again. You know, it's like this. The story is ridiculous.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Was it like Godzilla versus King Kong?
You know, but the movie's still entertaining. You know, it's like
What was the story for that? I don't know anything about that movie.
um, they're like a roving band of mercenaries that wind up getting stuck in this Great Wall of China. But the mythology of the movie is the Great Wall was erected because there's like this land of like demons or just rampaging monsters, and that's the wall is there erected to stave them off. You know, and Matt Damon is like a master bowman. I'm sure I'm not doing this synopsis justice. It's been a while since I watched it. He gets recruited to help or blackmailed to help. I'm not sure how you want to word it, but it's like if you want to be set free, you got to help fight. And it's another one where he falls in love with the culture, and it's yeah, I can't explain it. I'm flailing. I know I'm flailing to explain it. I should probably just stop. Let me ask you this: you only watched the first 5 episodes. What have been your favorite like parts of the show so far? Either scenes or moments, character beats.
Nothing really stood out too much, but I've been really enjoying it. Right. The thing that kind of caught me off guard was how much they swear.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's like right in the first episode, you get like a shit out of Bucky, right? Or Sam.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, it's gonna be that kind of show.
I
Like I
like
don't mind
how,
where it just wasn't. I just wasn't expecting it.
yeah, it's not a good or a bad thing. It just kind of, yeah, caught me off guard. I'm like, oh, okay.
What you still on Disney, not Netflix? um, like I said, my favorite scene was the Dora Milaje taking the shield from Walker, but there were some other. There were some what the hell moments, and there were some other cheering moments, like in the final episode, which you'll see. You know, there's an aerial fight with Sam where he gets knocked out of the air by a helicopter. Um, like just bumped, and then he like crash lands into a barge full of shipping tubes or something, containers. Lands in water, and when he comes back out of the water, he's like, "Oh, you just earned that ass whooping you're about to get." You know, lines like that I like. But like then there's what the hell moments. In the final episode, Sharon Carter gets shot um, by Carly, and Carly gets killed by Sharon. And the next scene, you see Sam carrying Carly to this. You know, they were like in a basement of a building that's being under construction. He's carrying Carly out to the ambulance on the main street, and I'm thinking, hey, your friend Sharon's still down there with a gunshot wound, and you're bringing the dead person up. I mean, I get the symbolism and stuff, but it's, you know, as an adult, it's like, hey, wait a minute, you left the living friend down there with a gunshot wound and brought the enemy, dead enemy up. It's like, okay, this is one of those I didn't understand the sequence of events there. I'm being pretty sketchy with the details because I think I'm going to have to do a lot of it with the color. Because if I do too much with the ink, I think it makes them look even more worn out. I mean, they're going to be aged anyway, but like the more lines you put in, the more distressed they look. Um, and when the Dora Milaje are beating up John Walker and Sam and Bucky Sam, Bucky, and Zemo are just kind of sitting back watching. You're doing great, John. It was a fun moment. Messed up, but fun. the training montage in episode 5. What did you think of that?
The training montage.
You may have missed that because you were working, but when they're on the at his sister's home, and Sam and Bucky are training with the Shield, having their heart-to-heart talk.
Yeah, I don't remember that part.
You'll have to go back and watch that.
Yeah.
It's the training. It's meant to show Sam like getting better with the Shield. So when you see him in the final episode, you can accept that he knows how to use this thing while he's flying. And it's also their kind of bonding heart-to-heart moment with Sam and Bucky. It's one of those moments where the fourth wall gets broken because during the training you can obviously see that it's a stuntman and not Anthony Mackie. This takes you out for just a split second. Yeah, that's not Anthony Mackie.
Sometimes I catch myself kind of getting a little too upset about certain things like that. Like,
No, I just think it's funny.
well, not necessarily like noticing a stuntman or body double or anything really like that, but just stuff that is like a mistake or like something that wouldn't happen in real life, and I have to just remind myself like it's a television show about a comic book, you know, like it's okay.
It's because they got like Sam like doing parkour and stuff and flips, or and there's just one scene in particular where it's just painfully obvious that it's not Anthony Mackie.
Mm. Is a dude like
The dude is like longer, like lankier.
yeah.
And that's just why it's so jarring. It's like, wait a minute, that's not Anthony Mackie. Just for a split second, though, and it's like, all right, I get it. Can't catch them all. At some point, you just have to let some things slide.
Like in a movie where there's like a 11-year-old being thrown down the stairs, and it cuts to the full-grown man tumbling down the stairs.
Yeah. You see that a lot in the old Chinese martial arts movies.
Mm.
Either kids or women being just blatantly swapped out for the male stuntmen.
With certain movies, that's kind of the charm of it, though, the cheesiness and the lack of attention to detail. And I think that's That's why like the Godzilla movies are still like super huge in Japan, where it's just dudes in big rubber suits.
That gives me basis to work with. Go back and do some links on this one. Call it a night. Oh, it's already. Should we start wrapping up? Any last thoughts on Falcon and Winter Soldier there, Nobu?
Oh, not really.
Jam,
I
you
like
got any?
what they did with Red Wing.
Yeah, the Red Wing. I was glad, the first time they showed Falcon, the Red Wing wasn't an actual bird.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that wouldn't have translated to like a film nowadays.
You say overall, I enjoyed it. There were a couple, what the hell moments, but um, overall, I enjoyed it. And I'm glad to see the MCU's not shying away from some of the social political issues. It'd be very easy for them to do so. Which, of course, just because of the way the world is right now, anytime you start doing stuff like that, people are going to be pissed off about it. Like even I watched, like when you watch the final episode, there's a kind of a soliloquy monologue moment that, even though I agree with the message, even I felt it was a little heavy-handed.
Mm. Yeah, I think they did a really good job of like having that stuff in there, but not, and you notice it for sure, but it's not like beating you over the head with it at the same time. Like that scene where the police show up.
Yeah.
Like that was really on the nose, but it wasn't like obnoxious about it. It was done very, very deliberately, but very tasteful at the same time.
Yeah.
They do a really good job with that stuff.
All right. If anybody's still watching, I think I'm gonna go head over to the drawing vid on Mog Park's Facebook page, and I don't have any pieces in it this time. I'm just gonna watch the other people sell their stuff and see what kind of conversation that was on there. You don't have anything in it this time, do you?
No, not this time.
Yeah. I thought didn't Lorenzo put something in this time?
Yeah, he has a Electra Psylocke piece.
Okay. I thought I saw Lorenzo, which is so I don't see too much art from Lorenzo, so it's cool to see. It's cool when I do see it.
He usually puts something up in Mog's auctions.
Yeah.
I think I did one, but I haven't really had time for too much fan art lately. So,
Well, I started off with Mog at the beginning, and I kind of do it when it's a topic that where they're not getting enough submissions, or they're not going to get a lot of submissions. So that's usually when I participate, just to beef up the numbers. But I looked at all the interest they had in this one, and it's like I don't need to participate this time.
yeah.
Then, they ended up with like 32 pieces in the drawing bid. So it's like, yeah they didn't need me.
Because it was Women of Marvel, right? So
Women of Marvel, yeah. And that's the thing is like, I have pieces I could have just pulled out of my inventory and thrown in there. I have lots of drawings, but it's like they're gonna have enough. I don't need to. I don't need to participate in that. All right. Well, thank you for joining. Nobu, if they want to catch you, where can they find more of your stuff?
Abject Comics on Instagram, or hit me up on Facebook. Okay. Nobuyuki on Facebook.
Jam, if you're still here, do you wanna promote your comic and game art? I don't know if Jam is still here, but you can just throw it in the chat. I can bring it up to the screen. Jam's an artist too, obviously. I'm here. You're on my page, so you know how to find me. Yep. All right. Have a good one. I'm gonna close it up in 3, 2, 1.